The fastest man alive has got some pretty strange villains to keep up with, so here are 10 of our favorites. 10. Replicant. There is a villain that was basically family to every villain in the Flash's Rogue Gallery and trained with all of them, and he's only had 11 appearances. Replicant was the actual nephew of a tailor that made all of the outfits for all of the Flash villains, so he's basically an evil nepo baby. He fights using a device from the future called a humanifold that turns whoever it bonds to into a living weapon. It replicates powers, whether that be super or skill-based. 9. Insomnia. Insomnia is a newer villain from the Dark Knight's Metal event, and he's really creepy. He was a Justice League stan until the Justice League couldn't save his family, and then he lost it, just a little bit. He got some superpowers and went on a spree. He gained nightmare powers, trapping people in their worst nightmare, invading dreams, reality warping. He appeared to have passed in Knight's End, but like I said, he is a newer villain, so he very much could return. 8. Altered Strain. Imagine you find out that you have the gene that gives people superpowers, only you're part of the lucky few that don't actually get any. That would be pretty frustrating, but it doesn't excuse wanting to rule like gods and attempting to kidnap an elected official, two things that the villain group Altered Strain attempted to do. The group wanted the government to give them money so that they can try and develop potential powers, despite never actually showing evidence that they have any. They've only popped up the one time. 7. Changeling. Changeling might be one of the only villains that Jay Garrick ever actually eliminated instead of just rehabilitated. He was a prisoner that planned to escape by sabotaging the power generator of his prison. It backfired and shocked him with so much electricity that it just gave him the power to transform into any animal. During his final battle with the Flash as a shark, Flash knocked him unconscious mid-transformation, and as he departs the scene, he says that only one of them could survive, and Changeling has never been seen again, so that is not a good sign. 6. Goldface. Goldface has since been on the mend, but he was once a villain to both Green Lantern and the Flash. Goldface is a literal name. He was experimenting with gold that had been saturated for the past few hundred years of seawater, and that gave him superpowers. Power over anything gold. His potion also covered his body in the gold, which was as sturdy as it was fashionable. Being technically all yellow, you can understand why he would be an issue for early Green Lanterns. 5. Claw. Claw set up quite the get-rich scheme. He rerouted a train that happened to be carrying all the leaders of big industries, says shipping, auto, etc., to his personal ghost town base. But he didn't hold these guys for ransom, no, he trained doubles for all of them and sent them off to be his inside men. The Flash saved the day by grabbing all those CEOs at super speed and then taking Claw through an assembly line, so that's sandpaper, a water bath, until he agreed to get arrested. 4. Spin. Spin uses the media against the Flash, but in a non-traditional way. He forced a being that can make people's fear reality to watch the news 24/7, so whatever the residents of Keystone City were feeling scared of, that would materialize. But Spin would manipulate the situation as the guy in charge of the main news station. News of earthquakes in a nearby city is making the public anxious, and that's the distraction for his next robbery, for example. It was quite clever, just not clever enough to stick around. 3. Papercut. Papercut tried to become the next big supervillain, failed spectacularly. His power to control wood is no match for Kid Flash or anyone, considering he actually doesn't really control wood that well. He is better at controlling its byproducts, like paper. Instead of using that knowledge to, I don't know, rob a bank, he decides to fight Kid Flash in the park. Slips of paper versus Wally West, you can guess how that went. If Papercut was really smart, he would partner with a villain that sprays lemon juice because God knows that exists. It's Condiment King. 2. The Eel. The Eel was a criminal that could slip away from any crime scene thanks to the grease gun that he carried with him. Literally, that was his whole thing. You can't arrest him if you can't get a hold of him. His other quirky moment was when he tried to send a bunch of people to jail thanks to blue laws, like if you didn't serve raw carrots with your dinner, jail. He also systematically built up a town. He hired the law enforcement and the mayor, attracted people to that location, and then flipped everything to his crime town with the law on his side. It was pretty genius, but foiled by the Flash at every turn. And finally, the Flash fought clouds, like actual clouds. The cloud creatures were sentient creatures that lived under the surface and caused earthquakes and volcanoes with the intention to eventually completely destroy the surface world. They would take on the appearance of a really angry cloud when invading the surface, and they would strike with lightning. Luckily, the Flash can defeat clouds by striking the nucleus, turning them into normal clouds.
In a 10, Rainbow Raider. The reason that all the good guys are good is because of their morals. Because they channel their anger into something positive, because they can control themselves. But what happens when a hero with powers like Superman is filled with a red-hot rage? Well, we saw it in Injustice. But someone able to cause those emotions, that person being Rainbow Raider, makes them pretty damn powerful. Rainbow Raider's power is derived entirely from their special goggles, okay? Which allows him to project solid beams of rainbow colored light that he can either use offensively or as a slide for travel, and he can also coat people in certain colors of light to induce emotions, like blue for sadness, red for anger. There's also the Rainbow Raiders, a team of super color themed villains that also have powers based on the color of their rainbow. However, just the ability to induce emotion by covering someone in light is enough to make Roy G. Bigelow pretty damn powerful. If all my rage came out and I had super speed, damn, people would have to like hide in fear, but it wouldn't matter because I would find them. And at 9, Zoom. I included a CW character on this list specifically for the guy in my DMs who told me to stop doing it. The CW version of Zoom was not exactly what everyone was expecting, although you have to admit he is one of the best and scariest villains in the Arrowverse to date. The sheer demonic look he had, especially with the suit, shook even me. However, thanks to the Velocity 9 that he was taking, Hunter Zolomon was incredibly fast, the fastest we had ever seen at that point. So fast even that in order to fight him, Barry had to take speed out of the equation. And during the final fight, Barry had to create a time remnant because he wasn't fast enough to stop Zoom with only one of him. It only got worse after Zoom kidnapped Wally and Barry had to give Zoom his speed in order to get Wally back. This only made Zoom faster. It gets even worse when in the final fight the Time Wraiths come out of the Speed Force and take Zoom, which changes him into the Black Flash, and then he gets supercharged by the Speed Force to become the living embodiment of death for all speedsters. Plus, I mean, this guy was able to create breaches at will to bring hundreds of metahumans over to Earth 1. That's pretty damn impressive. And at 8, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, alias Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal, on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend. Cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs, Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof. The duo fell into the lab space below, with Allen landing amid the chemicals that gave, presumably, Earth 1 Barry his speed. Something in this incident, probably the chemicals, granted him his super speed, and he went on to become a super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who had also been given powers. While his girlfriend took on the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. The couple joined the crime syndicate at some point after this, and they ran through Central City, answering to no one, until one day the White House burned, around the time of Darkseid's incursion onto Earth Prime. The being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. So yeah, it's basically just Barry Allen, but Earth 3. I say that's pretty overpowered. And at 7, Weather Wizard. Meteorological madman known as the Weather Wizard was a menace to both Barry Allen and Wally West's Flash, and one of the most overpowered supercriminals they've ever faced. First appearing in 1959's The Flash number 110, criminal Mark Martin armed himself with the Weather Wand, an advanced piece of technology which could control like atoms in the universe, some form of energy, okay? Martin took the wand from his deceased brother, a scientist who never intended it to leave his lab. With some modifications, it became a deadly weapon for the criminal, and at full power, the wand could summon lightning storms, rain clouds, or change the weather entirely. Whatever the weather was, Martin could use his mighty powers to rob banks and cause mass panic. A later reimagining of the Weather Wizard would see him instead granted the metahuman ability to control the elements without using the wand. And the Weather Wizard also appeared in the CW's Flash TV show as one of the many metahumans created by the particle accelerator explosion which gave Barry Allen his powers. However, on the show there are 2 versions, one of them appearing in the first episode which Joe West killed, and the second appearing in the 16th episode of that season, with the second one being the first's older brother, the Martin brothers, Clyde being the first one, and Mark being the second, and the proper Weather Wizard. As Cisco said, he's been waiting to use that name since day 1. And at 6, Gorilla Grodd. Gorilla Grodd is a Flash rogue from Africa's Gorilla City. The original Grodd, which debuted in DC Comics in 1959, was a telepath who could control other animals and also had a form of mind control as well over humans. In the New 52, all inhabitants of Gorilla City had accelerated mental attributes due to the Speed Force, but Grodd was still the superior member of the species. On The Flash and the CW, Grodd was a very intelligent gorilla experimented on at Star Labs to try and create a super soldier for the US government. However, the torture and unethical treatment of the gorilla caused him to grow angry and evil, and he escaped seeking vengeance. Grodd had powerful mind control powers on top of superhuman strength and enhanced intellect, and at one point even combined with the Flash to be a psychopathic, telepathic gorilla with super speed. So I think it's safe to say that we should all be scared of Gorilla Grodd. Plus, his pop figure is pretty damn cool. Halfway through into number 5, Savitar. The fact that Barry Allen was able to just beat this whole Savitar thing from The Flash Season 3 will always escape me. I won't really ever understand how they actually ended up defeating a literal version of Barry from the future. Like, I get how they managed to do it, but it was still incredibly unrealistic, since technically Savitar would have known beforehand that the timeline was changing, since technically that should, in my brain, at least be how time travel works, but this ended up being how it works in the show, so that's fine, I guess. I don't see how it ever would have been possible to defeat a future version of the Flash without this though, but I know that he couldn't really die, since if he died, Savitar wouldn't be able to happen. A future version of the Flash is always going to be mega OP, okay? I said it. In at 4, Mirror Master. While Mirror Master never seemed like much more than a B-grade supervillain in Flash's rogues gallery, his power has made him so much more. Before he became a Flash version, the second Mirror Master, Evan McCulloch, was an assassin in Scotland and was already a formidable foe. However, once he got his mirror gun, he became insanely powerful. The mirror gun gives Mirror Master the ability to travel to an alternate dimension by entering and exiting any reflective surface. On top of being a significant pain in the Flash's side, Mirror Master has also fought Animal Man and was someone that gave him all he could handle. The CW used the Sam Scudder version, and he was only a minor villain, and then they kinda did Eva McCulloch for season 7, but honestly, even Sam being able to travel through mirrors like that, trapping the Flash in the mirror dimension for a time, this guy is certainly underestimated. Although I hope that they find a way to explore maybe some of his abilities in later comics or even the show. I'd like to see that. Getting close to the end, in number 3, the Shade. This Golden Age Flash foe is one of the most powerful and most terrifying, but he isn't always on the side of evil, luckily. First appearing in Flash Comics number 33 from 1942, this immortal conduit for dark energy was a formidable enemy for Jay Garrick and often caused problems, the speedster, with his weaponized shadows. Kind of like my demons, causing me all kinds of problems as well. Initially depicted as a common criminal for the Flash to stop from robbing banks and menacing Keystone City in the 40s, the Shade was eventually reimagined as something much more sinister. Originally possessing a magic cane allowing him to control darkness, the revamped 90s Shade was given a real identity of Richard Swift and an endless supply of supernatural abilities. Returning to menace the hero Starman and eventually becoming his ally, the Shade used his powers of shadow manipulation, time travel, teleportation, and intangibility for both good and evil. The Shade also had his own dimension, the Shadowlands, where unwitting enemies would become trapped. And I think that having his own dimension earns him a spot in the top 3. Just saying. Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear the story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but because, of course, Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So, understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods. He started killing people, which honestly seems more realistic to me, aside from just being done fighting crime totally, which can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers, understandably because again, this time Batman's a psycho. So, Batman, using the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile, I don't know how the hell he did that, and then drives them both into the Speed Force. Again, I don't know how that happened or works logically, but okay. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get back to the future, your kids are in danger. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce, again, somehow ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing. And while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body, so he could just watch. He then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, who was part of the Dark Knights and whose goal was conquering the multiverse, and since he was a version of Batman who was psycho, he was like, hey you, come here, come with me, we're the same kind of. And finally, in number 1, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Necron's purpose. Now they aren't really fully resurrected, but that's kind of the best analogy that we have. Those with the ring have very various powers including a healing factor, aura recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain, and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, because you know that's a lot, it's worth it. And they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Yeah, basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to laugh at, especially when it's the man who killed Barry Allen's mother for the fun of it. In its end, Captain Cold. Leonard Snart was raised by an father and took refuge with his grandfather, who worked in an ice truck. When his grandfather died, Snart grew tired of his father's and set out to start a criminal career, because that's a healthy coping mechanism. Snart joined up with a group of small-time thieves in planning out a robbery, and he was issued a gun with a visor to protect his eyes against the flash, but I mean like the flash of the gun, not the flash as in the superhero. But this visor design would later be adapted into his trademark costume. In recent years, he's like added like a radio receiver to it, and you can pick up police traffic or like police radio with it. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, look, I'm sorry. I know that a whole bunch of people love Captain Cold, but okay? When he decided to go solo, and like, yeah, he's really smart about it, but like, he shouldn't be able to hold his own against the Flash. He shouldn't. I'm sorry. Like, I get that he has a cold gun, and like, cold is the opposite of fast because it slows molecules down or whatever the hell the explanation was. But come on. Like, sure, you shattered Johnny Quick's leg, but if I am faster than a frickin' bullet, I'm gonna be faster than a cold flame. Alright, I am. That's just how it works. That's normal. Sorry. 8 and 9 Cobalt Blue. While in the comics, Malcolm Thawne is the lost twin brother of Barry Allen, in the show that's not really the same thing. In the Arrowverse, Cobalt Blue is Eddie Thawne, who is brought back by the Negative Speed Force in order to make him their avatar. To erase Reverse Flash from the timeline, Eddie shoots himself in the heart in the end of season 1, since he's a direct ancestor of Reverse Flash. But his death created a paradox, since Eddie didn't leave behind any children to continue the Thawne name like he was supposed to. So Eobard Thawne is never born, but he still keeps showing up in the goddamn show. The paradox also created a wormhole that opened and started expanding, pulling Eddie's body to it, and then like it was supposed to swallow up Central City. But this wormhole actually sent him to 2049, where Eddie was then resurrected by the Negative Speed Force. He originally worked as a scientist at Mercury Labs known as Malcolm Gilmore until he was struck by a red lightning bolt from the Negative Speed Force. But the way that his storyline ends, series finale spoilers for The Flash by the way, is that Barry convinces him to let go of the hate, but still stay the Negative Speed Force avatar. Yeah, they have a climactic battle with all the speedster villains of seasons past that lasts like a minute, and then they all disappear, and then they just shake hands at the end. So yeah, I'm gonna say Cobalt Blue, even though we were all waiting for it, is kind of overrated when it comes to the show. And at 8, Gorilla Grodd. Gorilla Grodd is a Flash rogue from Africa's Gorilla City. The original Grodd, which debuted in DC Comics in 1959, was a telepath who could control other animals and had a form of mind control as well over humans. In the New 52, all inhabitants of Gorilla City had accelerated mental attributes due to the Speed Force, but Grodd was still the superior member of their species. On The Flash in the CW, Grodd is a very intelligent gorilla experimented on by Star Labs to try to create a super soldier for the US government. However, the and unethical treatment caused him to grow angry and evil, and he escaped seeking vengeance. Grodd has powerful mind control powers on top of superhuman strength and enhanced intellect, and at one point even combined with the Flash to be a psychopathic, telepathic gorilla with super speed. So I mean, like, we should be scared of him. Like, yeah, that makes sense, and his pop figure's pretty cool. But other than that, I get that like he's a telepathic gorilla, but it's still super speed. You shouldn't really have to worry when it's super speed. How are you able to control my mind if it's able to move at super speed? I'm gonna say that every single damn time. And at 7, Weather Wizard. Barry was struck by lightning. Why does weather have any impact on this man? Meteorological man, known as the Weather Wizard, was a menace to both Barry Allen and Wally West's versions of the Flash, and one of the most overpowered super super criminals that they ever faced in the comics. First appearing in 1959's The Flash number 110, criminal Mark Martin armed himself with the Weather Wand, which was an advanced piece of technology which could control eolic energy. Martin took the wand from his deceased brother, who was a scientist who never intended on that object to leave the lab, but with some modifications it became a weapon for, criminals. At full power, the wand could summon lightning storms, rain clouds, or change the weather entirely, which I don't know why it's listed separate from summoning lightning storms, but oh well. And whatever the weather, Martin could use his mighty powers to rob banks and cause mass panic, kind of like the world's weirdest postman. A later reimagining of the Weather Wizard would see him actually just granted metahuman abilities and lets him control the weather without using the wand, and he's also appeared on the Flash TV show as one of the metahumans created by the particle accelerator, which also gave Barry his powers. However, in the show there are two versions, one appearing in the first episode that Joe West kills, and then a second who appears in episode 16 of that same season, both of them being the Martin brothers, Clyde being the first and Mark being the second. But still, again, he has super speed. Why should I be scared of rain? Why should I be scared of rain? Oh no, you're gonna shoot lightning at me? I have super speed, I'm going to go around it. It just doesn't make sense. Come on, give me something to chew on. And at 6, Rainbow Raider. The reason that the good guys are good is because of their morals, okay? Because they channel their anger into something positive, because they can control themselves. But what happens when a hero with powers like Superman is filled with white hot rage? Okay, well, I mean, we saw it in Injustice, but someone able to cause these emotions, such as Rainbow Raider, makes them pretty damn powerful sometimes. Rainbow Raider's powers are derived entirely from the special goggles that he wears, which allows him to project solid beams of rainbow colored light that he can use offensively or for like a travel as like a slide. It's kind of stupid the way he does it, but oh well. But in addition, he can coat people in certain colors of light to induce certain emotions. There have also been the Rainbow Raiders, which was a team of supervillains that all had like specific color themes that had powers based on their color of the rainbow. But still, just the ability to induce emotion by covering someone in light is enough to make Roy G. Biv pretty kind of scary, but I mean, also, it's super speed. Again, if he has to eat like 1,000,000 tacos over the course of a month to be able to maintain his metabolism and his body, I feel like, oh no, I'm angry. Oh, now I'm not, because, I have super speed and it just wore off. Come on, right? Am I right? I feel like I'm right. Is it just me? How am I doing at number 5? Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. Okay, August was the only witness to Barry's accident, and while going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. August then became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed and got his revenge on those he suspected to have killed his brother. He had given up justice since, his killer's brother had gotten free, and, all the things that an evil speedster ends up doing. But I mean, for someone that calls themselves Godspeed, you ain't moving at the speed of gods, alright? I'm just saying. You can keep scrolling, I'm riffing now. It's kinda dumb, alright? If you're gonna call yourself Godspeed, at least make sure that you're actually like very, very fast, not just like very, very fast in comparison to a human. Like, come on, the amount of times that they're like, oh, I am the god of speed, and they're not, is just sad. And you know what? There's another one that I'm about to talk about. In at 4, Savitar. Don't get me wrong, okay? I love Savitar as a villain, and despite it possibly being controversial, yet brave, I think that the CW took the Future Flash story and made it work for TV. But where I'm thinking that Savitar is overrated is the Flash DCEU movie, okay? I liked the story, the base was there, but it just kind of felt like the Savitar or Dark Flash thing was put in there for merchandising reasons, or because the CW version was so dope, not because it like organically fit the story. Like, yeah, it made sense that he knocks himself out of the Speed Force to be created, like the Paradox creation for the CW version, but in the movie we see him once when he's coming back from saving his mom, and then he's never mentioned again until the climax. Like, I liked that he had like the metal suit because he kept getting shoved full of like the Krypton tech, but like, come on, I called it. I called that he'd be the other Barry as soon as we saw him the first time. And then, as soon as he got like that first bit of Krypton tech in his arm, I called the rest. It felt kind of forced. Like, the marketing team said that they needed to advertise a villain for the movie instead of the villain just being the Paradox itself. But yeah, there's a reason that this guy didn't show up in the trailers, because he didn't really show up in the movie either. Getting close to the end at number 3, Mirror Master. While Mirror Master never seemed like much more than a B-grade supervillain in Flash's rogues gallery, his powers at times make him a lot more. Before he became a Flash villain, the second Mirror Master, Evan McCulloch, was an assassin in Scotland who was already pretty formidable, alright? If you're an assassin that hasn't gotten caught, I should say. However, once he got his mirror gun, he became more powerful. Obviously, it's a freaking mirror gun. The mirror gun gives Mirror Master the ability to travel to an alternate dimension by entering and exiting any reflective surface. On top of being a significant pain in Flash's ass, Mirror Master has also fought Animal Man and was someone that gave him all that he could handle. But I mean, in comparison to the Flash, yeah, Animal Man is gonna have a harder time. The CW used the Sam Scudder version and was only like a minor villain, but honestly, being able to travel through mirrors like that, he should have been more powerful, okay? He trapped the Flash in the mirror dimension, but then they just kind of froze it and he was able to get out. So obviously, there's not really any more threat that this guy poses other than being able to get away when you really think about it. So yeah, sorry Mirror Master fans, but dude's kind of lame. But ultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. However, there is one speedster that every speedster is scared of, that speedster being the Black Flash. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force, making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 in 1998. He was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. In essence, not only making him the embodiment of death, but also the speedster omen of death. In the CW Arrowverse, he was Hunter Zolomon after being caught by time wraiths, and was killed in the season 3 finale by Killer Frost when he came after Savitar, since the Paradox was finally catching up with him. In the comics, thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Jesse Quick, Jay Garrick, and Max Mercury, Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning, which didn't matter for long since Barry later returns in the Flash Rebirth, becoming the new Black Flash unknowingly. But like, that doesn't make sense to me, personally, okay? Like, how are you able to race death to the end of time and then death has no meaning? If you are at the end of time, the only thing there is death. So, how does that work? I mean, he's dope, he looks really cool, but just his rules are what make him stupid. Sorry. And finally, in at number 1, Reverse Flash. There you go. That's it. Okay, sure, he's the fastest in the show, but he's just annoying. Like, he keeps coming back too much, okay? Let's let some other people shine. We don't need the Reverse Flash every single goddamn time. Every crossover, every finale, every damn instance that there's like, oh, it's an evil Barry, it's not an evil Barry, it's Reverse Flash. So yeah, cut it out and just give us someone else, please, for the love of God. 10, Quicksilver. The Flash is known as the fastest character in DC Comics, and while Superman may come close, he doesn't hold the title of fastest man alive. Over in Marvel Comics, however, that title belongs to Quicksilver, a mutant hero with an arrogant demeanor and formidable speed. He rarely meets anyone or anything that can challenge his velocity until the DC vs. Marvel crossover event where he faced off against the Flash. Yes, this actually happened. At the beginning of their battle, the two heroes were evenly matched, but Quicksilver briefly gains the upper hand. However, it doesn't last long, as Flash's speed proves to be too much for Quicksilver to handle. The Flash secures his victory with relative ease. Though they team up later in the series, Quicksilver can't seem to shake his resentment towards the Flash for being faster than him. The Flash is the undisputed fastest character in DC Comics, so yeah, I mean, like, it makes sense. He proved to be even faster than Quicksilver, Marvel's fastest character. Yeah, I can understand the resentment. I mean, if you think that you're the fastest and then they prove that you're not, it makes you a little bit bitter. In at 9, The Flash. Ironically enough, one of the superheroes who hates the Flash is actually the Flash. And I'm not talking about like Wally hating Barry's version. I'm talking Barry Allen getting so mad at himself that he travels back in time to kill his younger version. This is a thing, guys. This is comics. While Savitar was introduced as the future Flash in the show, the real future Flash is very different in the comics. When Iris and Wally West get into a car accident, Wally ends up dying and Iris gets paralyzed. Blaming himself for not being there, Barry becomes a much darker hero after. He kills the Reverse Flash, Mirror Master, and Grodd before turning his attention on his past. The Speed Force has a tear in it, so Barry kills his younger self and uses the energy to seal that tear. Good Barry wakes up in a savage world, a place outside of time, and he uses his intelligence to return to the normal world and then fights off his future self once again. The two then team up against a different villain who wants to use the Speed Force to destroy the world, and the older Barry creates a large enough explosion to kill the villain, which was technically himself. But basically, the gist of this storyline is that Barry's mad at himself for not being able to save Wally and Iris, so he decides that the only way to fix this is to go back in time and kill his younger version, because that makes sense. And it ain't Kid Flash. Wallace West, also known as Kid Flash of DC Rebirth, is the son of Daniel West, who becomes Reverse Flash, and the nephew of Iris West. Due to some time-traveling events involving the Speed Force and, you know, the reasons that they had to make sure that the characters were the same age in the comics, Wally gains speed power similar to his idol the Flash, and becomes eager to fight crime. But he needs training because, you know, he's new to the Speed Force and having speed, and he's also kinda reckless. Although Wally doesn't really listen to Barry, he respects and listens to the Flash, who is Barry's alter ego, but he doesn't actually know about it. He doesn't know that Barry's the Flash at this point. But Barry knows about Wally's. Barry takes Wally under his wing as the Flash and trains him, but their relationship becomes strained when Barry is forced to reveal his identity. Wally already resented Barry for being distant with Iris, but when he discovers that Barry is the Flash, he hates him even more. He's furious at Barry for keeping the secret for so long, and it made the resentment grow that much more, so yeah. In its 7, Green Lantern. After Hal Jordan's descent into madness, Ganthet, the last guardian of the universe, created one final Green Lantern ring and bestowed it upon the artist Kyle Rayner. Entrusting him with the legacy of the Green Lantern Corps, despite some initial doubts, Kyle proved to be an exemplary Green Lantern and even rivaled the iconic greatness of Hal Jordan. When Kyle joined the Justice League though, it was a significant moment for him, but one member of the team wasn't thrilled, and it was Wally West, who was known as the Flash. Both Wally and Kyle were legacy heroes and relatively new to their roles, but Wally initially disliked Kyle, believing him to be too inexperienced and lacking the ability to fill Hal's shoes. Similarly, Kyle couldn't stand Wally at first either. Despite their initial animosity towards each other though, they eventually learned to work together and became friends, with Wally even entrusting Kyle with protecting the Earth in his absence. In its 6, Elongated Man. Now, at least within the context of the show, Barry Allen and Ralph Dibny, aka Elongated Man, did not like each other when he was introduced. Ralph Dibny is a former police detective of the Central City Police Department and a private investigator. He was fired after Barry caught him planting evidence to ensure the conviction of a man who Dibny was certain was guilty, but of course, planting evidence is illegal and it got him thrown off the force, because, you know, Barry reported him, causing him to have to turn into being a pretty piss poor PI, honestly, but also starting to hate Barry. And Barry hated him, due to not only his own strong sense of justice, but also the fact that his father was an innocent man in prison for a crime that he didn't commit. So you can kind of see how planting false evidence would kind of trigger some anger. In the pre-Flashpoint timeline though, Ralph was one of the people who lost their lives during the Star Labs particle accelerator explosion. However, he reappeared alive in the post-Flashpoint timeline, gaining his powers due to exposure to dark matter from the Speed Force thanks to the Thinker's timing. Using these powers, Ralph joined Team Flash and began acting as a metahuman vigilante and superhero, initially referred to by the media as Stretchy Man, but shortly thereafter being dubbed the Elongated Man. Thank God for that. He and Barry then buried the hatchet, ironically, and left on good terms. Well, he left the show. Not on good terms with the show, but on good terms with, like, the character-wise, not the actors. It's a whole thing. Halfway through in at number 5, Vibe. After the creation and the reset of the Flashpoint timeline in Season 3 of The Flash, there was some serious tension between Cisco Ramon, aka Vibe, and Barry. The result of this, that was slowly revealed, was that in this timeline, Cisco's brother Dante was killed in a car accident, while this event never occurred in the original timeline. Dante's death affected Cisco greatly, to the point where he would frequently ask the Barry of this timeline to travel back in time to save Dante from his death, although this Barry would always refuse, driving a wedge in the two's relationship. At some point after this though, Cisco began to attend regular talk therapy sessions to express his grief, and having realized what had gone wrong, Barry explained to Team Flash how he saved his mother and how he changed everyone's lives in the process, which only angered Cisco Cisco more, because now he knew that Barry had saved a member of his own family, but refused to do it for a member of Cisco's. They eventually made up, but Cisco definitely hated Barry for a good chunk of this season, being at odds with him even during the invasion crossover event of that season until like the last part of it when Barry was going to sacrifice himself to the Dominators, and then Cisco's like, "You're my friend," and I'm like, how does that clear everything up? But oh well, they had to do it. And at 4, Green Arrow. Oliver Queen, also known as Green Arrow, is arguably the most politically aware superhero in DC Comics. He advocates for the common people and doesn't have much patience for those who don't. And while he may not be the most powerful member of the Justice League, he is still important to the team, serving as a grounding force. In The Flash and Green Lantern Brave the Bold number 4, Oliver strongly disagrees with Barry and is just, there's a whole thing. He's appalled by the brutality of the police system and is disappointed that Barry is not more aware of it, while Barry believes that the police keep law and order in the city. I mean, like, I guess it would make sense for him to have that view because he's a CSI, but he's also a superhero who's doing the cops' job better than the cops. So Oliver thinks that the cops need to be monitored more closely, and he wants Barry to see that and just not be naive about it. But yeah, it causes some conflict, as you can suspect if you've ever been on Twitter. Hal Jordan watches the arguments between the two, feeling powerless to intervene, but eventually they do reconcile their differences, but this clash of opinions was not resolved permanently. Green Arrow is a politically aware superhero who champions the common people. Yeah, when he disagrees with the Flash on the issues of police brutality and the like, he's definitely gonna cause some friction, although this isn't a thing in the TV show. But I mean, they also had to give Barry a mentor because he had to figure out how to be a hero somehow. So getting close to the end in number 3, Supergirl. In the New 52 storyline, Kara Zor-El arrives on Earth to a world that she doesn't fully comprehend and that fully doesn't understand her. Despite Superman's attempts to help her integrate into society, she still feels like an outsider and yearns for her lost home. So when the Kryptonian villain Hell appears and promises to restore Krypton to its former glory, Kara eagerly joins him, unaware that she's just being manipulated and endangering Earth in the process. Despite the efforts of Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash to stop Hell, Kara fights alongside him, hating the Flash for his interference, being unable to understand why he and Kal-El won't let her go home. However, with the help of the Justice League, Kara eventually comes to see the truth and just realizes the danger that this villain possesses and that she's actually just being manipulated and he can't bring her home. So she ultimately abandons her misguided quest and chooses to stay on Earth. But again, she was fighting the Flash, so that's good enough for this list. Superheroes can't hate each other forever, otherwise how are they gonna do comics where they team up so that the DC can make more money? Okay, come on. But ultimately, in at number 2, Jessie Quick. After acquiring speed powers through her father's formula, Jessie Quick desired to become a superhero. She crossed paths with Wally West, who started to train her, claiming that she could be his successor if anything ever happened to him. Jessie was thrilled with this, but her happiness was short-lived when she discovered that this was actually just a ploy. Wally was really using her to put pressure on Bart Allen, known as Impulse at the time, to take the mantle of the Flash more seriously. Jessie then felt betrayed by Wally's decision and came to loathe him, understandably. But despite her anger towards him, Jessie ultimately saved Wally's life but suffered significant injuries in the process. As Wally helped her recover, Jessie lost her powers, which she believed was due to Wally's actions, but was actually just the result of Savitar's interference. Nevertheless though, Jessie remained resentful towards Wally and did not like him, because not only did he lie to her, use her, and then also get hurt in the process of trying to save him, she also lost her speed. So I get it, okay? I get why she would hold a grudge against him even after saving his life. And finally, in at number 1, Batman. Now, this may be a bit of a controversial pick, but on Red Death's homeworld of Earth -52, Batman hated Barry enough to steal his speed. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth -52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So understandably, Batman got more and more darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, let's call them. Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just, quitting fighting crime. But that can't happen because if he did, they wouldn't have a story, right? But this eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers. So Batman uses the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. I'm not even even kidding, okay? I don't even know how that happened or like how it logically worked, but okay, you do you, Bat Marty. You need to go back to the future in your Bat DeLorean cosmic treadmill. But yeah, when entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. I think that qualifies. And at 10, Future Flash. Now, Future Flash is going to start off this list because while yes, they are faster than the Flash, and they are a villain, at least overall, Future Flash is literally just another version of Barry from an alternate future where Wally dies. So in an effort to prevent this from happening, Barry kills his rogues gallery, starting with Gorilla Grodd. It's actually pretty brutal because he phases a bomb into his head, but he kills them in order to gain enough speed to return to before Wally died and kill his past self, which would result in either Wally not dying or the most complicated paradox known to man. Like how is it possible to kill a past version of yourself? Like, does that make any sense? If you kill your past self, then your future self doesn't exist and is therefore unable to travel back in time to kill that version of you. You could say like alternate timelines, but that would still result in a future version of you being unable to travel back since they wouldn't exist. Unless all possible futures exist at the same time and then you traveling back only solidifies what future you'd get. However, then the timeline where you are alive would then not exist, so it couldn't happen. Multiverse, man. Gotta love it. In at 9, Black Racer. First introduced in Captain America number 310 in 1985, the Black Racer is also a villain in the Marvel universe of comics. She was introduced as a member of the Serpent Society and has been a recurring villain over the years, even if they aren't as common as that sentence would make it seem. Ariana Siddiqui can run and move at superhuman speed. She was a member of the 4th Serpent Squad along with Copperhead, Fer de Lance, and Puff Adder. She continued on with the Serpent Society, though appearing sparsely throughout the team's later appearances. Her name and snake motif is actually based on a type of snake found all around the US called the Eastern Racer. The snake is also known as the Black Racer or the Buttermilk Racer. They are nowhere near extinct, unfortunately, but I hardly see snakes nowadays, cross my fingers, so I don't see any harm in having them around, at least. I know that Taylor thinks that snakes are worse than spiders, but he's wrong. You can grab a snake by the head if you're brave enough and then they can't really hurt you, but spiders? Have you seen anyone try to grab a spider by the neck? Exactly. Not even Billy the Exterminator would try that, okay? Also, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, be sure you hit that like button and subscribe because it helps us out, and you know the deal. In at 8, Silver Surfer. While the Silver Surfer isn't a villain nowadays, he was introduced as the Herald of Galactus, which even if it's unwillingly is still a pretty evil dude if you look at it like that, since you know you're finding worlds just to put to death basically, like the Intergalactic Executioner. However, the Silver Surfer making use of his cosmic surfboard is pretty damn speedy. Silver Surfer can travel at nearly 500,000 light years per second, which is impossibly fast. That's 2.939 times 10 to the 18th miles per second, let alone per hour. A light year is the distance that light is able to travel in 365.25 days, and is therefore exactly 9,640,730,472,580.8 kilometers. Ha! That's that times 500,000 per second. The only reason Surfer isn't higher on this list is because he went light side. If he had stayed a villain or was at least a willing Herald of Galactus for reasons other than saving people, he would have been number 1. And at 7, The Rival. Edward Claris was a professor at the university attended by Jay Garrick. He believed that he had recreated the formula that gave Garrick his speed, but pissed at the rejection of his research claims by the scientific community, Claris became a criminal, wearing a darker version of the Golden Age Flash's suit. The effects of his version of the formula, however, proved to be temporary, and he was defeated when it ran out. He appeared a few months later and in battling the Flash reached light speed and vanished. He has the typical powers of a speedster but is definitely faster than our Flash, I guess, or at least Barry or Wally, especially when he comes back and becomes pure speed energy and possesses Max Mercury, but that's an entirely different story. The CW adaptation of the character more so resembles Daniel West's version of Reverse Flash, but also proved to be faster than both Wally West and Barry Allen, since this was the start of season 3 and Barry hadn't been supercharged yet. Edward Claris in the Arrowverse was a metahuman villain in the Flashpoint timeline and was the arch-enemy of Wally West's Kid Flash. After Flashpoint was reset, however, he was given back his speed by alchemy using the Philosopher's Stone and then killed by Savitar while in jail. And at 6, Hurricane. Hailing from Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, Hurricane was first introduced in Ultimates 2 number 9 in 2006 and died shortly thereafter in Ultimates 2 number 12 that same year. However, before doing so was invited to participate in a race hosted by Runner. Hurricane was a woman with superhuman speed from North Korea. She gained her speed somehow thanks to surgery, the story of which isn't entirely explored, but probably because it would just be difficult to explain. She joined the Liberators alongside representatives from Syria, Russia, and China to oppose America's Super Agents program represented by the Ultimates. Hurricane was killed by Quicksilver while holding America hostage. She died when Quicksilver moved so fast while holding her that she disintegrated. But while she may have died, getting invited to a racer's race is only reserved for the fastest speedsters in the multiverse, so there has to be something special about her that we missed out on seeing. So it would be a shame to discount her as potentially being faster than the Flash. Halfway through into number 5, Zoom. The CW version of Zoom was not exactly what everyone was expecting, although you do have to admit he is one of the best and scariest villains in the Arrowverse to date. The sheer demonic look that he had, especially with the suit on, shook even me. However, thanks to the Velocity 9 that he was taking, Hunter Zolomon was incredibly fast. The fastest we had ever seen at this point. So fast even that in order to fight him, Barry had to take speed out of the equation, and during the final fight Barry had to create a time remnant because he wasn't fast enough to stop Zoom with only one of him. It only got worse after Zoom had kidnapped Wally and Barry gave Zoom his speed in order to get Wally back, so this only made Zoom faster. And then it gets even worse again, when in the final fight the time wraiths come out of the Speed Force to take Zoom, and then he becomes the Black Flash and gets supercharged by the Speed Force to become the living embodiment of death for all speedsters. So yeah, it's safe to say that while he may not be faster than Barry now, at the time Zoom was the fastest speedster that we had seen. In it for Reverse Flash. But while he may have been the fastest in the show, there is no describing the significance of the Flash's true arch enemy, the Reverse Flash. A few people have gone by this title over the years, but most notably Eobard Thawne. Thawne is the ultimate catalyst in Barry Allen's life, not only being the reason Barry's mother died, but also the reason he became the Flash. Since in the Flashpoint timeline in the comics and the animated movie, Barry had never gained his super speed when his mother was saved. In the year 2463, when he was a child, Eobard Thawne saw his father kill his mother. Later, he became connected to the Speed Force after being struck by a bolt of lightning and attempted to take over the Gem Cities, Central and Keystone. However, it didn't work because the 21st century hero known as the Flash was revered as a legend, which caused the people to rebel against Thawne and fight in the Flash's name. He would then forcefully take over cities and burn down the Flash Museum. Not to mention, going on and killing Barry's mother. This is like the ultimate level of petty. It's as if Eobard was Barry's jealous ex-girlfriend who went absolutely psycho when she sees him happy with someone else. Like, hot damn, dude. Just chill out. Getting close to the end in number 3, Savitar. The fastest evil speedster we've seen from the CW is Savitar. While his comic counterpart is certainly interesting, the truth is that the CW version of the character is even faster than the current version of the Flash, at least on the screen. Being so fast that he basically teleports between where he is and where he wanted to go. Not only that, but this was all while he was trapped inside a Speed Force prison, which is only more insane. The story for the character is kind of insane as well, with Savitar really being a time remnant of Barry that he used while fighting Savitar in the future. This time remnant then gets shunned by Team Flash and then gets mad about it, traveling back in time to become Savitar and start the cycle all over again. However, it seems that Savitar gets his increased speed from his suit, since when inside he can travel at near instantaneous speeds and has white lightning, whereas outside the suit he has orange lightning like Barry and travels at the same speed. So while this character is a version of Barry like Future Flash, his suit and his Savitar's persona is where he gets his incredible speed, so I think that's good enough to keep it in the top 3 spot. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. However, there is one speedster that even Savitar was scared of, that speedster being Black Flash. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force, making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2 number 138 in 1998. He was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen, in essence not only making him the embodiment of death, but also the speedster omen of death. In the CW Arrowverse, he was Hunter Zolomon after being caught by time wraiths, and was killed in the season 3 finale by Killer Frost when he came after Savitar, since the Paradox had finally caught up with him. And in the comics, thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters including Jesse Quick, Jay Garrick, and Max Mercury, Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to just not exist apparently. Which didn't matter for long, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline unknowingly becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in the Blackest Night storyline. Jeez, there's a lot of Black Flashes. Finally, in at number 1, Runner. I've mentioned Runner earlier on this list, but the thing is, this guy isn't exactly a villain in the typical sense. But I mean, all godlike entities that don't really focus on helping and just do things for their own enjoyment are villains in some form or another, right? Well, Runner fits that bill, holding races of heroes and villains alike to see who's the fastest in the multiverse, but also being extremely arrogant. This guy has been around since the Big Bang and has had all that time to get faster and learn more. His main goal is not to blow up and then act like he don't know nobody, but rather to be the first person to see everything the universe has to offer. And if anyone can do it, it's gonna be this guy. He's so fast that he will show up at a place even before he's decided if he wants to go there, which doesn't make sense to me but still speaks volumes as to how fast this literal primordial being is. He's faster than the Speed Force, a literal force of nature, so he is absolutely faster than the Flash. And since he doesn't really care about keeping things in balance, I'm certain that he won't care if the world ends as long as he gets to see it. So, a villain in my book anyway. And a 10 boyfriend killer. After his research on the Speed Force while at residency in the Flash Museum had gained some traction, Eobard fell in love with a reporter named Rose who had been hired by Central City Science Today to interview him. However, he learned that she was engaged. So his future self interfered with the timeline, killing Rose's fiance in an attempt to get her to love him, but it didn't work. So he proceeded to kill every man she had started seeing after her fiance, and eventually every man who she had ever dated at all. So when she steadfastly refused to believe that her fiance was gone for good, they became platonic friends. However, she continued to just brush off Thawne's romantic advances, eventually retaliating physically when he attempted to kiss her. In anger, his future self traumatized the reporter as a child, rendering her mute and causing her to be institutionalized for the rest of her life. Although, if she was still friends with Eobard while knowing full well that he was just in love with her, she only had him around for attention at that point. Any good person wouldn't be friends with someone who was in love with them if they didn't feel the same. Just saying. I'm causing a few of you to rethink your relationships, huh? In at 9, ripped a letter. This doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me. Not even Batman was safe from this devil. During the events of the Flashpoint comic arc, Barry brought back to Batman a letter from his father, who is alive in the Flashpoint timeline as Batman. It's the only contact that Batman has had with his parents ever since they died, so it would be a shame if something were to happen to it. Oh wait, that's right, Thawne decides to rip it to shreds so that it couldn't even be reassembled. It also didn't help that Thomas was the reason that Thawne was killed in that timeline, so yeah, this was certainly a way to get back at Thomas even though he was dead in this timeline, which was probably the best way to get revenge. But like, this was still super unnecessary, but I guess it was worth it in the end for Eobard, but it would have messed up Batman real bad. And at 8, Flashpoint. Speaking of Flashpoint, let's talk about the fact that Thawne is in essence the reason that Flashpoint is a thing. I mean, if Thawne had never killed Barry's mother, Barry would never have had to go back to save her, resulting in the Flashpoint timeline. Depending on what version of time travel, or I guess what theory of time travel you believe. Either there was an original timeline where Barry's mother didn't die but he still became the Flash, or the killing of Barry's mother always takes place, resulting in a chicken and the egg scenario where Thawne had to create the Flash to then create himself to then go back and create themselves. Either way, without Thawne, there would be no Flashpoint. His mere existence is what causes Flashpoint to be made, even if Barry is the one who ends up changing the past to save his mother. So I'm gonna count this as something that Thawne did. And at 7, creates the Flash. Aside from the whole killing Barry's mom thing, turning Barry into the Flash, Thawne in season 1 of the Flash TV show did a whole other thing. After being stranded in our present after killing Barry's mother due to a lack of speed, Thawne decides that the only way to get back to his time was to get the Flash's help. So he kills Harrison Wells, takes over his identity, wears his face, and creates the particle accelerator early. 6 years early to be exact, since originally the accelerator explodes in 2020, thus creating a whole new timeline of events, similar to what Nora does when she helps Barry destroy the Thinker satellite in the season 4 finale, advancing time by 5 years. This time Thawne advanced it by 6 years, using the face of another man to train Barry, gain his trust, and then ultimately use him to get back to his own time. That's pretty messed up if you ask me. And at 6, lead fascists. In the Crisis on Earth X crossover event from the Arrowverse, we get our world and a wedding of Iris West and Barry Allen interrupted by a group of fascist soldiers from an alternate reality known as Earth X, the classic Germany wins World War II scenario. However, these soldiers are accompanied by evil versions of Green Arrow and Supergirl. The evil version of Flash is missing, however he does appear in the Ray animated series, which this crossover also technically has a crossover with, but they're just brought into real life, same kinda like how they did with the Vixen crossover. But the evil version of the Flash in this crossover, oh you bet your ass it's Thawne. Wearing Wells' face no less, presumably having killed the Barry of Earth X, Thawne helps Overgirl and Dark Arrow lead a group of fascist soldiers on the attack, nearly taking control of Earth 1 if not for the Justice League that hadn't officially been formed yet. Even the Joker turned on Red Skull when he learned that he was actually a fascist and not some kook in a costume. Reverse Flash is worse than Joker! Confirmed! Halfway through into number 5, framed Barry's father. In the process of killing Barry's mother out of anger since he couldn't manage to kill Barry, Thawne ended up framing his father for the murder and gets him sent to prison. Obviously this wasn't really avoidable because of how time works or whatever, but this still causes Barry a great deal of pain. I mean that was the ultimate intent, but it's still pretty messed up. And in The Flash Season 2, Thawne confesses to the murder of Nora Allen in an effort to show Barry that even with his dad out of prison he still won't be happy, which is even more messed up. Especially given that him getting his father out of prison directly results in his death at the hands of Zoom. And then Barry meets his father's doppelganger from Earth 3 known as Jay Garrick. And then another version of his father named Barry Allen from Earth 90 in the Elseworlds crossover. Meeting Jay also sends Barry spiraling into a depression that causes him to create the Flashpoint timeline in the Arrowverse as well, which was already an earlier point. So I think that this definitely earns a spot on the list. In at 4, killed his family. Eobard Thawne was born in 2451. His parents genetically engineered him to be highly intelligent and to have a particular appearance. However, as he grew up they became concerned about his lack of social skills and tendency to daydream, which was frowned upon in their very regimented society. Hoping that caring for a sibling would help Eobard adjust, his parents had a second son, Robert. Eobard struggled to manage his little brother and chaffed when reprimanded by their parents for his periodic outbursts that were triggered by his frustration. But later down the line, he applied to the Flash Museum to study the Speed Force, but it was rejected. So he started researching it illegally. But then he was caught by Robert, who was an officer in the Science Police. This caused Eobard a great deal of pain, which is understandable given that your brother sent you to prison, so much in fact that a future version of Eobard traveled into the past and prevented Robert from ever being born, which caused him to get the job at the Flash Museum. His knowledge of the Speed Force also caused his peers to nickname him Professor Zoom, but eventually his parents grew concerned and instigated the closure of the Flash Museum. So again, his future self interfered with the timeline and caused the deaths of his parents, allowing him to continue his research. Yeah, that's right. In post-Infinite Crisis, Eobard Thawne killed his family. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, the Spear of Destiny. The Spear of Destiny, or Holy Lance, was an immensely powerful biblical artifact capable of altering reality. It is mentioned in Judeo-Christian religions, and it was an ordinary spear before Roman soldier Longinus used it to pierce the side of Jesus Christ after he died on the cross, resulting in its immense supernatural powers. The second season of the Arrowverse show Legends of Tomorrow revolves around the Legion of Doom, composed of Damian Dark from a time before he was killed by the Green Arrow, Malcolm Merlyn after just watching Damian die on TV, and Thawne. Captain Cold, Heatwave, and Rip Hunter were also among the members, but the main unholy trinity were these three. They did end up managing to rewrite reality, and in this reality, Eobard Thawne made himself mayor of Central City and the owner of Star Labs. Also in the present time, not 2040 or 2140 or whenever he was born, which is weird. But still wanting status and fame, he would use his genius and company to solve various problems around the world, to which he gained various awards and influence over the world. He also had the demonic speedster that was chasing him, Black Flash, as his personal pet prisoner who constantly struggled to get free of his cell. He also made it so that Ray Palmer, Martin Stein, and Jefferson Jackson worked for him and had miserable lives. He also had Rip Hunter trapped inside the Wave Rider when it was shrunk, and he kept it as like a little statue in his lab, which is that's a whole other can of worms. Penultimately, in at number 2, the Dark Multiverse. The original Flashpoint story sees Barry save his mother and create a whole new world where he isn't the Flash, like I explained in number 8. However, in the Dark Multiverse version of the story, Barry doesn't get his speed back, instead dying when he and Thomas attempt to restore his power. So the vacuum left by the Flash is filled by none other than, you guessed it, Eobard Thawne, who claims to be the Flash and proceeds to try and end the war between the Amazons and Atlanteans by threatening and killing, which obviously just works out in his favor and he becomes a hero. Just kidding. Instead, this causes the Atlanteans and the Amazons to team up and try to destroy America. So as a way to stop this, Thawne runs back in time and creates his own version of this new timeline, crafting it perfectly to his whims, something that the Flash show would later adapt briefly. In the comics though, he prevented the Flash from ever being created, he saved Bruce Wayne as well as Martha and Thomas Wayne, resulting in there being no Batman, and ends up converting every superhero to his purpose, resulting in Thawne having a whole Justice League at his disposal. They even have reverse Flash symbols on their outfits. Plus, preventing Batman from ever being made, and I say this every time, is the best decision that anyone has ever made as a villain in this universe. If there's no Batman, there's no one that's going to resist you, because Batman is going to resist every single time. And finally, in at number 1, Reverse Flashpoint. The Flash Armageddon is currently an ongoing 5-part crossover taking place in the first 5 episodes of Flash Season 8. However, in episode 4, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, it's revealed that Eobard Thawne, who looks like Wells again, but is using his real name, creates his own version of Flashpoint, where thanks to the new negative still force, instead of saving Barry's mother, he manages to kill Barry as a child, as he set out to do so many years ago. Or I guess Will set out to do. I don't know, time travel is weird, man. Anyway, he kills Barry as a child and then takes his place at CCPD the night the accelerator exploded, resulting in him becoming the Flash. And as this episode takes place, one night away from marrying Iris West. Yeah, so basically, Thawne changed the timeline so that he was actually the Flash. No imitation, no fake outs, he was truly the Flash. Like in this scenario, Speed Force chose him. And Barry was the Reverse Flash, even connected to the negative Speed Force, and having the classic red lightning and yellow suit. And as Damien Dark said, that is a work of evil art.